Hello everyone and welcome to another RPL weekend recap. This time it's all the races from round 4 of the brand new seasons, and once again, as always, we'll be going over 2 topics per tier to debate with you the viewer, and these are topics I bring up that you guys can give your own opinion about, and I would love to hear from you guys what you think about the specific topics we're bringing up today for recapping week 4 races and also previewing the upcoming races as well. Let's start off the weekend reminding you what happened in RPL Tier 3. It was Silverstone and it was jakebandy's first win in RPL, and also McLaren getting another win on the season. The first topic to debate here is, has jakebandy fixed his race pace issue? And I think the answer is yes. Imola 2 seasons prior, he was on pole in qualifying by quite a decent margin over guys like George Williams, who was good in the races, Rapid Owen, who was good in qualifying, Invade. He struggled at Imola though, so I'm going to count him out of the picture. I'm going to put Jordan back in there in the picture because he was racing tier 3 at the time and maybe a little too fast for the tier. Well, he did get banned from the tier, so he definitely was too fast, but jakebandy spun quite a bit that race, and there's a lot of performances he's put in the past that's shown that he was quote-unquote a qualifying merchant. There are races he did in tier 2 last season that maybe prove that he did fix his race pace issue. 3 top 5s in this tier specifically, 1 P4 finish, 1 top 5. So the potential has been there from jakebandy in the past, so it should be no surprise that he's finally broken through for a victory. The only difference in this whole debate, I guess you could say, is that we've not seen jakebandy prevail when he started well. I believe it was the Monza race in tier 2 last season. He started up in the top 3, but he didn't finish up there. And that's the thing. He finally has sealed the deal. I feel like F124 is definitely a bit tough to tell in terms of drivers dropping off from qualifying pace. But jakebandy has definitely figured that issue out. In my own opinion, Silverstone definitely shown that. And even when he had the disadvantage from the safety car, he still found a way to win. jakebandy deserved a lot of credit. Congrats to him once again on the victory. Yes, he has fixed his race pace issue that he had in the past prior. My next topic to talk about and settle really does go back to the topic we just mentioned. jakebandy, first career win. Now you got to wonder, will we have any other first-time winners throughout the season in Tier 3? My answer is yes. We already have a few. We had Lero Fusion win his first race. We also had as well AMS Devon. I had to take a moment to think about that. 4 different winners so far this season. 3 of them being first-time winners. And I feel like the drivers I'm naming are not as strong candidates to win races, but with some of the tracks coming up, there is chaos that could head, and that's what's going to do it. Hungary, which it's a tight track, season 1, could have had a first-time winner. Penalties changed it though, and on track. Monza, always chaotic there. And one of the other races coming up is Las Vegas, which could just be a simple game of DRS chicken, and also could be a game of chaos. Some of the drivers that come to mind is the second McLaren driver, Netsky. He's had a bit of issues recently, staying out of trouble, but he's had to do these recovery drives, and he's done a very well job doing that. If he could at least figure out the qualifying issues he's had at times with the pace there compared to teammates, and also not being involved in some sort of incident that sets him on the back foot, then I feel like we would be talking about more of him for a potential first career win. But one of the drivers I want to add in is Timbed. Timbed, he's done a fairly decent job recently, whether it be from the Mercedes or the Aston. We get a chaotic race. He could potentially be a first-time winner. Polish Hammer is a good shout. He had a decent race in Silverstone, but his problem is he's got to stop causing incidents. If he stops causing incidents and also getting caught up in the wrong place, wrong time, then he definitely can get a first career win in F1 shorts, whether it be from a chaotic race in a Haas, whether it be asked to pull up to the Ferrari team. He can get a first career win and he's got the potential, but he probably has to be in a Ferrari in order to do that rather than a Haas. He's someone who probably fixed his own race pace issue in Silverstone. But there are a lot of drivers to talk about when it comes to this. And I would add Spengler in there, especially based on Season 1 performances, but recent races in the Red Bull prove otherwise. I think there's at least 3 drivers you can put in the conversation for potential first 10 winners. And with the way these Tier 3 races end up going, you're at least going to get one of these guys prevailing through for a first career win. And I can't wait to see it. I'm telling you that right now. These Tier 3 races are a blast to commentate. They're a blast to watch, I'm sure, as a viewer. And no doubt in my mind, we're going to have more unknowns happen. Speaking of unknowns, here's one of them. Lennon. First race of the season in Austria, just last week. It was George Williams not continuing his winning streak, which I'm sure a lot of people are happy to see, because George continues to always just find a way to win races, which he deserves a lot of credit for. A lot of drivers have opinions on George. He's a driver, you either love him or you hate him. With George's case, it was Penguin beating him in Austria. But it was also Lennon who was in that fight as well. And I want to talk about Lennon because George was a previous teammate of his. And the thing I look at when it comes to Lennon is we had Gecko in Tier 1 break a winless drought. We have Polo coming just shy of doing so as of recent. Red Fire helped break a drought for himself last season. Mintoki broke a female winning driver drought in Tier 2 last season. Lennon, will he be the next driver to break a winless drought? My answer is yes. We have Mexico on the Tier 2 calendar as far as I'm aware. We have technical tracks like Canada and Las Vegas. I mean, Las Vegas has a lot of straights, but you look at the turns itself, those are technical type of turns. Lennon does well at those type of tracks. And I feel like last season he was just shy of the victory. He was watching Red Fire in a lot of races in front of him, just duke it out with George and miss his opportunity. Now, you notice these races, besides Imola, really in Tier 2, we've not had any driver pull away in any circumstance and just gap the field. For Lennon's case, he has a genuine chance. In the Tier 3 race in Mexico that he did, he was on pole and probably should have won. He didn't win. Mexico, he's won before, and that was his only Tier 2 win. He can break the drought of winning for the first time in 5 seasons. I really do believe he can. Speaking of upcoming races, the next question to debate is this. When will our next wet race in the Tier be? Our most recent one was the Season 13 finale in Brazil. And you gotta really wonder, is there a lack of wet races in Tier 2 or just this game in general? And I do have to say, compared to last game, it seems like it is a little bit. Well, we did have a little dry spell in Tier 2 last game with the lack of wet races. I do think we're seeing the same thing happen again, but look at the upcoming tracks for Tier 2. Hungary, Canada, Mexico. Even after Las Vegas, you have Australia and Brazil. All circuits where we see tons of wet weather action at. I feel like we are going to see a wet race this season. That's for sure. We do see wet qualifyings from time to time, but not wet races. Our next wet race will either come at Canada or Mexico. Hell, even the Hungary race in Tier 1, we had a wet race there as well. Yeah, Canada, we've not had a race there in the dry too often as of recent. I want to say you had the Season 12 running, which was dry, but Season 11 you didn't have dry running fully, only just the end of the race. I do feel like we are going to see a wet race, and it will be in one of our next 3 races that our next wet race will be. I don't mind these wet races, in all honesty, just because of the fact that you have these DRS trains that these races are full of, and it's kind of annoying how constant it is, just because you have some drivers who shouldn't be in these DRS trains, and It's not because they have no talent or no skill. It's because they're in cars that are 8, 9 tenths back, and DRS keeps them in the fight. Speaking of fights, Egg and Hunted, they had a boxing war in Monza just last week. A lot of controversy struck in that race, and we're going to get to it because there were some things in that race that weren't too harmful on track compared to other things we've seen, especially in this tier, but just things that were not taken seriously, and there were excuses made for it. I'm not saying Egg said this specifically, but there are other drivers who said this to excuse his behavior as well as Hunted's, that just because F2 is a quote-unquote dying tier, it's okay to not be as serious. Unless the tier coordinator, George, or the owner, Jack, said that, then I don't think it's okay or excusable at all. Egg and Hunted, they were messing around in the race. They were causing some issues. The thing we're talking about here is what should happen to them. Egg's already been penalized on the F1 side as far as the steward report. This happened to him last season as well in F1 during season 19 F2. He's been allowed back in F2 again, and this thing happens once again. Egg's a decent guy. He's helped out RPL quite a bit. He helped out Tier 3. He helped merge his own league with RPL, brought over some people, FX7 Danny, Samuel Drake Lee, Rapid Owen, other drivers to name as well, but the problem with Egg is when it comes to on track, he doesn't have the best interest for RPL. When it comes to off track, he's got a lot of good interest for RPL, and I have to give him credit. I'm not forgetting Hunted involved with this battle because this is not the first rodeo he's had, Mexico Season 10, but that was less significant. There was only one moment with Luke that just made no sense between them two. This one, these are multiple moments on the circuit that just happened. I think Egg needs to have some sort of punishment with his admin role. I would not mind him still coordinating Tier 3, but clearly banning the guy from the tier has not changed anything in the past. And what's the point of banning him from the tier when Jack has already said that this tier is going to be disbanded after the season, which is very unfortunate to see. Egg needs some serious penalties. Hunted needs some serious penalties. That's what needs to happen, at least at the minimum. Even if F2 does come back next game, which people wanted it to come back, I don't think Egg should be allowed in this tier again at all. He's been banned from it numerous times, and he's a repeat offender. Hunted is now a second offender, but Egg has done it more than him, and that needs to be looked into. So, some form of punishments for sure, and really laying down the line with them too. Yes, I want to make this clear before any admin jumps the gun with what I'm saying. Admins do get harsher punishments from what I've noticed in the past. Look at George in Texas, Season 12. Yes, it probably could have been a league ban in other leagues, but at the same time, you know, he got banned in other tiers for the sake of what he did rather than just only Tier 2. Egg, he had the same thing happen to him last time, and it happened this time where he gets banned in other tiers for his incidents in F2. Our other topic to have a debacle over is going to be this one. Should the red flag situation have happened, and what could have avoided it? Jack said, I intend, basically, in his own words, not all his own words, but to kind of translate it, I guess, I put the red flags on purpose. You know, F2, lack of numbers. Let's kind of have some fun with it. I don't mind the decision by Jack to do that. I mean, F2 could be ran as a test here throughout the remainder of the season, but here's my big problem with it. I wasn't there, so I can't say a whole lot, but I did read over the chats. At least say something about it. At least say something that you're going to end up putting these settings on for the drivers. Therefore, they can mentally prepare for it. I'm sure everyone's thinking by then, whoa, we got to restart. Or, whoa, as soon as the red flags come out. This happened in Spain, Tier 2, Season 10, when the red flags got put out. Or no, Season 9, excuse me. This happened in Australia, the first race of the game cycle in F123. When you put red flags on and you don't tell anybody, drivers are going to automatically assume it's a restart, and there's times where people have just crashed into each other once they're told it's a restart, or in other scenarios, they retire in the pits or other different ways because they assume it's a restart. I know it's not right to assume, but you have a lot of people in this league who do that. And on Jack's case, I don't mind what he did for the red flag situation, but it's the way he went about it. You gotta end up telling people you're gonna do that. That's not right, that you didn't tell anybody. I do like the red flag kind of thing though, because it did remind me of F3 a little bit from 2015 with Monza, a bit of extra chaos. And, you know, honestly, it made a little bit of fun into the race. But, yeah, come on, Jack. You gotta tell people when that's the case. If he's thinking because maybe he's owner, he doesn't have to tell anybody that you're changing a setting, when it's that significant, I think you do. That's at least how I see it. But I'd love to know everyone else's thoughts. Should Jack Miles have told everyone else, we're putting red flags on? Because you may as well mess with other settings for F2 and then tell people what's going to happen. Because, like Jack said, F2 is going to be disbanded after this season, and I hate to see that because everyone wanted that over Formula Endurance because the lack of numbers. Now that people wanted F2 back, it came back, and, well, it's, you know, no one's showing up to help it stay here. So, there you go. Our final tier is the F1 tier, and we had races on Saturday in Monza and Japan. Monza being the chaotic one, Japan being the less chaotic one, but Japan, more drivers had an opportunity for the victory. One of those being Mineko, the other being Florian van Zelter, and I really want to focus on Mineko on this sense compared to Florian van Zelter. The question or topic, I guess, to debate here is the fact that could Mineko or Florian van Zelter have won the race? And I think the answer is yes. Mineko, his biggest problem in that train was managing ERS. He did a very poor job of that. If he didn't do a poor job of managing that ERS, he probably could have won the race. I think the Ferrari tire bar also kicked in as well. Florian van Zelter, I'm not sure what else he could have done. Maybe some help from his academy teammates could have been a big play into winning that race. But as soon as the medium runners came through the field, they were on the back foot, and those guys were on the front foot. They had the upper edge, and they were gonna always prevail, it seemed. But I think the progress could have stopped itself. The second train got there, and Egg and Jack both went through on what, lap 22? I think it could have easily came down to the last lap with the medium runners taking the lead. If Mineko and maybe even Florian worked together better. But both those drivers have a bright future here. Mineko, 2 podiums. Florian, 4. Both those drivers will win races. I think Mineko's actually proving now that he can win races. And similar to Polish Hammer, he's got to stay out of incidents. Whether it's his fault or not, Mineko seems to always be right in the thick of things wherever there's an incident. And he got penalized for one as well, so just something to keep an eye out on. Now, speaking of Mineko and Florian, both those drivers in recent races have had penalties, whether it be on track or in the stewards room. Looking ahead, the upcoming race in Imola, the question now becomes, how many drivers finish this race without track limit penalties? I think the difference is, compared to last time at Imola, the drivers know the track limits around this circuit quite a bit. You can put a little bit of the 2 wheels on the curb on the white line and get away with it, but once you put half your car on that section, and not even all 4 wheels, half your car, the game dings you with a track limit penalty or a warning. Extremely harsh, but you know the limits now. You know what it's capable of. I think a lot of drivers always try to push that limit, but there's no reason to do that in the race when you're stuck in a DRS train the whole entire time. Yeah, there's only one DRS zone, but you're going to be stuck in the train, and as long as you're smart about track limits, there's really no reason to have at least more than 3 seconds, and a lot of the drivers did end the race last season with quite a bit of penalties. Red Fire with 15, Ding with 12. Leo Lund, the race winner, with 6 seconds, and he was very lucky to get away with winning the race with that. Only 3 drivers finished the race without track limit penalties last season. Jack Miles, always notorious for doing so. He finished without track limit penalties. Cookie did a very good job there. SLR Metal got points from it. I think the difference compared to last season's race is, like I said, the drivers know the track limits better around the circuit, but also we're farther into the game cycle. We know what Imola's like, and also we know the DRS trains are like. You don't need to push over the limits way too much and get a track limit penalty because of it. Even some of the drivers only had 3 seconds in that race as well. They know what the price is that they'll pay for it when they do have a track limit penalty, but they also know the reward for not having one. When you look at guys like Metal and even Cookie and Jack who could have won the race last season. So I'm saying a total of 4 or 5 drivers and this upcoming race in Imola without track limit penalties. Yes, more than last time, but not too much more. Every Tier 3 driver had a penalty in the first race at Imola. It is a possibility we have that happen again, but that would be on the driver's sake. I'd be a bit disappointed to see that. Speaking of seeing things, I hope you guys do end up watching the upcoming races in RPL. Tier 3, Tier 2, F2, all in the Hungary for the next race. And then we have Imola this weekend for RPL Formula 1. That's our Twitch name. That's our YouTube name. Make sure you watch all the races this weekend on our socials, the Twitch, the YouTube, live replay, live race. Nonetheless, give us your thoughts down below or wherever, maybe in the Discord server, on what you think on these topics we talked about during this week's recap. Nonetheless, I'm your commentator and narrator, Ryan Searles, signing off. Have a good one, folks, and we will see you for the races. And let us know what you think as always. Goodbye and good night.